The 1960s were a golden age for motorcycles. Iconic names like Triumph, Honda, and Harley-Davidson dominated headlines. But many equally fascinating machines stayed in the shadows. Here are 12 remarkable 60s bikes you might never have heard of, but that deserve their place in motorcycle history. 1. The Munch Mammoth. 1200 TTS was one of the boldest bikes of the 1960s, a true outlier in a world of modest machines. German engineer Friedel Munch took an NSU Prince car engine, 1,177 cc, four-cylinder air-cooled, and fitted into a motorcycle frame, creating a machine with 88 horsepower when 40-50 was the norm. Weighing nearly 300 kilograms, it wasn't light, but its massive power made it faster than slimmer rivals, hitting around 130 miles per hour. Its styling was raw, even crude. No sleek lines or streamlined fairings, just muscle and audacity. Built largely by hand with details like magnesium wheels and oversized drum brakes, each unit was practically bespoke. It cost more than most cars, which limited production to under 500. This was no mass-market bike. It was a monster for the daring few who craved raw speed and engineering insanity. The Mammoth was too big, too strange, and too expensive for the mainstream, but it was years ahead of its time in power. For those who appreciated it, it was one of the first true superbikes, a machine that ignored convention to chase extremes, embodying German overkill in every bolt and weld. Even today, it's remembered as a legendary oddity, proof that the 1960s could produce not only icons of style, but also unrepentant brutes built purely to test limits. The Mammoth remains a testament to unrestrained engineering vision and fearless motorcycle design. 2. Bridgestone 350 GTR. The Bridgestone 350 GTR was Japan's quiet masterpiece of the 1960s, built by a company better known for tires than bikes. It wasn't designed to turn a profit, but to show off engineering muscle. Its 345cc two-stroke twin used rare rotary disc valves, producing 37 GP at a time when that was huge for its size. Weighing only 160 kilograms, it could reach nearly 100 miles per hour, making it a genuine contender against bigger rivals. It also boasted a 6-speed gearbox and electric start, both advanced features for the day. The finish was excellent, showing off Bridgestone's commitment to quality. But politics killed it. Bridgestone sold tires to companies like Honda and Yamaha, so competing with them strained those relationships. Faced with industry pressure, they chose to shut down their motorcycle line rather than risk their core business. As a result, the 350 GTR faded away, never getting the recognition it deserved. Riders who tried one found a precise, overbuilt machine that felt ahead of its time. It wasn't a commuter hack, but a high-tech statement that Japan could outdo anyone when it wanted. Though it's mostly forgotten today, the Bridgestone 350 GTR remains a hidden gem. A bike built to prove a point and succeeded, even if it couldn't survive in a market where profit mattered more than brilliance. 3. Bulakaco Metrola Mach 2. The Bulakaco Metrola Mach 2 was Spain's fierce answer to bigger, slower machines of its time. Built in the 1960s under Franco's regime, it was a 250cc two-stroke single that delivered 32 GP at 8,000 revolutions per minute while weighing just 112 kilograms. This combination let it hit 105 miles per hour, enough to shame much larger bikes on twisty roads. It wasn't built for comfort or flash. It was stripped down, with low bars, a slim tank, and minimal fairings that made it look like a street-legal GP racer. Handling was razor-sharp, the 5-speed gearbox slick, and the brakes did their job well enough to keep things exciting without killing you. But it was also a bit of a beast, smoky, loud, and utterly unforgiving to riders who didn't respect it. Outside racing circles and die-hard fans, Few heard much about it because Japan's cheaper, more reliable machines were flooding the market, leaving bikes like the Metrola in the shadows. Still, for those in the know, it was the scalpel in an era of sledgehammers, a bike that demanded skill but rewarded it with blistering performance. It proved that displacement wasn't everything. Nerve, weight, and sharp engineering could make even a humble 250 a giant killer. 4. Veliset Venom Thruxton. The Veliset Venom Thruxton was the last true hurrah of Britain's big single-cylinder tradition, built with care and purpose. Under its slim tank sat a 499cc single that delivered 41 HP, impressive for a single in the 1960s, giving it a top speed around 110 miles per hour. It wasn't just fast for its type. It was a race bike wearing street clothes. The Thruxton got clip-on handlebars, rear-set foot pegs, a tuned cylinder head, and a bigger Amal GP carburetor, all designed to give riders an edge. Every bike was hand-assembled, with Veliset's trademark attention to detail, making them rare and special. But its timing was terrible. The Japanese were coming in with smoother, cheaper, multi-cylinder machines that outpaced British factories in both marketing and production. Veliset couldn't scale up to compete, and by the early 1970s they were gone. Today, the Thruxton is a prized collector's item, a symbol of what British engineering could achieve before the industry collapsed. Back then, it was the weapon of choice for endurance races, humiliating twins with its surprising speed and reliability. It proved that with the right tuning, a single could still dominate, even as the world moved on to more cylinders. 5. Royal Enfield Interceptor, Mach 1. The Royal Enfield Interceptor. Mach 1 was Britain's attempt to crash the American market with sheer force. It featured a 750cc parallel twin engine putting out around 50 GP, a big step up from their earlier designs. It wasn't subtle. Long, lean, and aggressive, it was built to rival Harley-Davidson and win over riders who wanted more speed. With a top speed over 110 miles per hour, it delivered real performance, using high-compression pistons, dual carbs, and improved oiling to push the limits of British engineering. Styling was minimalist but tough, making it ideal for drag racing or flat-track conversions popular in California. Despite its promise, Royal Enfield couldn't match Harley's dealer network or marketing power, and soon faced fierce competition from cheaper, more reliable Japanese imports. Though the Mk1 led to the improved Mk2, by then the company was in decline. Even so, for a time the Interceptor Mach 1 represented what British bikes could have become if they had stayed competitive, a fast, powerful machine with raw appeal. Today, it's a cult classic, remembered by those who rode them as the bike that could keep up with anything America threw at it, even if the world was already changing. 6. Levera 650 GT. The Levera 650 GT was Italy's calculated strike at British twins, aiming to do everything they did but better. Built in the mid-60s, it featured a 654cc parallel twin engine, producing around 50 GP, paired with a solid 5-speed gearbox. But what really set it apart was its build quality. Levera's engineers famously tore down bikes like the Honda CB77, Norton 650 SS, and BMW R69S to study their strengths, then combined those ideas into a design that was smoother, stronger, and more reliable. The result was a bike that could cruise at 100 miles per hour without leaking oil or flexing in corners like its British rivals often did. It wasn't flashy or loud, but solid and dependable, using hardened crankshafts and robust electrics to avoid the usual headaches. Only around 50 were made before Levera shifted focus to the larger, racier 750S that made them famous. The 650 GT ended up overlooked, seen as just a prototype for things to come. But without it, Levera's entire future success wouldn't have happened. It was proof that an Italian factory could match Britain's best and outlast them, laying the foundation for the brand's golden era in the 1970s with a bike that was all substance over show. 7. Honda Dream 305 Superhawk. The Honda Dream 305 Superhawk, or CB77, was Honda's first real street sport bike, showing the world what Japan could do. Its 305cc parallel twin engine delivered 28 GP at 9,000 revolutions per minute, letting it hit 105 mph, unheard of for such a small displacement in the early 60s. Unlike many bikes of the era, it featured an electric starter, 12-volt electrics, and a pressed steel spine frame that added rigidity and stability. While its design looked unusual to Western eyes, it made the bike strong and predictable in corners. It wasn't just fast, it was refined. Riders got smooth, shifting, dependable power and low maintenance compared to leaky British twins. This was the bike that changed perceptions in America, proving that Honda wasn't just making scooters, but serious machines ready to compete with Triumph and BSA. It also inspired an entire generation, including a young Robert Pirsig, who rode one across the US, later writing Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. But despite its importance, it was overshadowed when the CB750 arrived in 1969. That four-cylinder legend stole the spotlight, leaving the CB77 as a pioneer often forgotten. Yet it remains the machine that started Honda's sport bike legacy. 8. Norton P11. The Norton P11 wasn't born in a corporate design office, but in dusty California workshops, built to conquer the brutal world of desert racing. It combined the lightweight matchless G85CS off-road frame with Norton's torquey 750cc Atlas parallel twin engine, delivering around 55 GP. The result was a lean, stripped-down dirt bike weighing about 170 kg, remarkably light for its power. It wasn't polished or refined. It was raw and aggressive, with high pipes, long travel suspension, and minimal bodywork. The handling was twitchy, the vibration intense, and the seat less than comfortable. But in the desert it was unmatched, blasting over trails that would break lesser machines. American riders loved it because it worked. Norton initially hadn't planned it, but saw how many were building their own hybrids and decided to make it official. Though it sold well for a short time, it was replaced in 1968 by the more sophisticated Commando, and the P11 faded into history. Yet it remains a testament to function over form, a bike built to survive and dominate in the harshest conditions. It was proof that sometimes the best designs come not from plans, but from the demands of real riders. 9. Rickman Matise. The Rickman Matise wasn't a standard production motorcycle, but an idea turned into metal. A kit, a concept, and a challenge to the industry. Created by former racers Don and Derek Rickman, it was built around a nickel-plated Reynolds 531 chromoly frame that was lighter, stronger, and better handling than anything from the factories. Riders could slot in Triumph, Matchless, BSA, or even Honda engines, transforming mediocre power plants into true racers. The geometry was precise, the brakes were proper, and the suspension was finally worthy of competition. Its name, Matise, meaning mongrel in French, was a nod to its hybrid nature. It tore up scrambles tracks in the UK and US, earning underground respect without mass production or big advertising. Even Steve McQueen owned one, calling it the best handling bike he ever had, a serious endorsement from someone who could buy anything. Because it was sold as a kit, it never became a household name, but it didn't need to. The Rickman Matise was about giving real riders and racers the tools to build exactly what they wanted. It remains a legend among those who value handling and craft over flashy badges. 10. Kawasaki W1. The Kawasaki W1 was Japan's first serious big-bore four-stroke, aiming straight at the heart of British dominance. Based on a BSA design inherited from Meguro, it grew into a 624cc parallel twin, producing about 49 GP, with a top speed near 110 miles per hour. Released in 1966, it wasn't just a clone, it improved on its inspiration. The W1 ran smoother, leaked less oil, and had an electric starter, something British bikes lacked. Its finish was solid, showing Kawasaki's commitment to quality. Marketing targeted the US, selling it as a Triumph or BSA alternative that actually started when asked and stayed reliable on long rides. But its time in the spotlight was short-lived. Just a few years later, Kawasaki launched the wild two-stroke H1 and the legendary Z1, making the W1 look tame in comparison. Yet it was important. It proved Japan could build big four-stroke twins as well as anyone, laying the foundation for future successes. Though often overshadowed, the W1 was the quiet revolution that showed Japanese manufacturers weren't just making small commuters. They were ready to challenge the world with serious, capable motorcycles built to last. 11. Moto Marini 344cc prototype. The Moto Marini 344cc prototype was a forward-looking machine that didn't just challenge 1960s norms, but outright ignored them. At a time when most European manufacturers clung to pushrod singles and carburetors tuned by feel, Marini engineers imagined something far more advanced. A 72-degree V-twin with overhead cams, a 6-speed gearbox, and a compact design that put agility above raw muscle. This wasn't about headline horsepower. It was about refinement, balance, and control. The 344cc engine was small but rev-happy, delivering smooth, usable power that made larger, lumbering singles feel outdated. The chassis was light and narrow, letting riders carve corners with precision uncommon in that era. It had the kind of responsive handling that felt closer to a modern middleweight than its 1960s peers. The bike was a test bed, not a production model. Marini used it to prove concepts that would eventually become reality in their famous 3.5 series a decade later. While that production bike became an icon among enthusiasts for its clever engineering and rideability, this prototype laid the foundation in quiet obscurity. Few outside the factory even knew it existed at the time. The motorcycle market then was focused on bigger displacement twins or dirt-cheap singles, and Italy itself was still recovering economically, leaving little room for experimental middleweights. Marini also lacked the massive marketing budgets of Japanese giants. So while Honda and Yamaha dazzled the world with accessible, reliable machines, Marini was off perfecting a jewel that wouldn't see showrooms until the early 70s. But the DNA of this early 344cc V-twin would define Moto Marini's future success. The production 3.5 became a cult classic precisely because it delivered what the prototype promised: a compact, precise, beautifully engineered machine that put rider experience above spec sheet boasting. It offered Italian style without the fragility stereotypes, reliable power without excessive weight, and handling that made bigger bikes feel awkward. The 344cc prototype thus stands as a fascinating missing link in motorcycle evolution. It bridged old-world single-cylinder simplicity and the coming wave of modern multi-cylinder sport bikes. It wasn't built to win sales charts in its time, it was built to show what was possible. For Marini, it was the blueprint for their golden era, even if few riders ever got to see it, let alone ride it. Today, it's a testament to Italian engineering vision and the value of thinking decades ahead, even when the world isn't ready to follow. 12. Gallera 124.5V. The Gallera 124.5V was a small displacement masterpiece that emerged in the late 1960s, just as its brand was quietly slipping from motorcycle glory into obscurity. Once a powerhouse in Grand Prix racing, Gallera had dominated the track with multi-cylinder screamers, but faced a new world dominated by Japanese efficiency and mass production. The 124.5V might have looked humble at first glance, a small commuter with a 124cc four-stroke single, but underneath that modest exterior lay one of the most refined small engines of its day. Its power output, around 10 horsepower at 8,500 RPM, might seem unremarkable, but it was delivered in a smooth, eager rev range that made it surprisingly lively. The real standout feature was its 5-speed gearbox, rare in a class where 3 or 4 gears were the norm. This allowed riders fine control over power delivery, keeping the little engine in its sweet spot, whether zipping through tight city streets or taking on gentle country curves. Weighing just 99 kilograms dry, the 124.5V felt agile, nimble, and almost playful, traits that made it ride more like a scaled-down race bike than a boring commuter. The styling was typically Italian, with clean lines and tasteful proportions that gave it understated elegance. This wasn't a flashy, chromed-up cruiser or a utilitarian plotter. It was a subtle nod to Gallera's racing DNA. The handling was light and precise, letting even novice riders feel confident, while experienced riders could push it surprisingly hard without losing composure. The little Gallera rewarded smooth inputs, rewarding finesse over brute force. But timing is everything. By the time Gallera launched the 124.5V, the Italian motorcycle industry was under siege from Japanese brands that delivered cheaper, more reliable, and often faster small displacement models with electric start, modern electrics, and bulletproof reliability. Gallera didn't have the resources to keep up in production scale or marketing. Their distribution networks were smaller, parts support inconsistent, and the company's finances shaky. By the early 1970s, Piaggio absorbed Gallera entirely, focusing more on scooters and mass-market transport than maintaining the brand's racing soul. As a result, the 124.5V was overshadowed, never finding a large audience. It was too refined for buyers seeking rock-bottom prices, too small for those wanting prestige or highway power. It lived in a no-man's land between serious sport bikes and cheap commuter rides. Yet for those lucky enough to own one, it left a lasting impression. It was reliable, beautifully built, and unexpectedly engaging to ride, proof that even a 124cc machine could feel special with the right engineering. Today, the Gallera 124.5V is a rare but cherished relic among enthusiasts who appreciate the subtle artistry of small displacement Italian motorcycles. It stands as a reminder of a brand that once ruled the racing world, still fighting to build quality, rider-focused machines even as the industry changed around it. In many ways, it symbolizes the last gasp of a dying era, an elegant, well-engineered bike that refused to go quietly even as the lights dimmed on Italy's motorcycle giants. Conclusion: each of these machines was unique, daring, and ahead of its time in some way. They might not have dominated sales charts, but they pushed boundaries and left their mark on motorcycle history, even if most people have never heard their names.